Got it.
Me too.
Hello, everyone. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes for folks who are in the waiting room to get into the Zoom. So bear with us.
Look at how many people think that I'm going to let them hide behind their video cameras being off. All of my friends, I see so many friends too, their names. Oh my goodness. Yay. Hi, Nancy. Oh my goodness. Krista, good to see you. Emily, do you have your hair tied back or did you shave your head? Oh, there it is. Okay, good.
Very good. Well,
Back
I'll
to
go ahead and start out with the introduction.
Oh, sorry. I'm just chatting with my friends here. You go ahead.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, welcome everyone to Lessons in Dementia, a free virtual workshop created especially to address the concerns of those caring for people with dementia. I'm Wendy Starr, the Director of Adult Day Health and Alzheimer's Services through the Humboldt Senior Resource Center in Eureka. We have adult day health centers in Eureka and Fortuna, and you can learn more about this and other programs of HSRC, such as Redwood Coast PACE, Meals on Wheels, and MSSP by going to our website at www.humsenior.org. This session is being recorded, and you can find this and past episodes of Lessons in Dementia on our website under the Adult Day Health and Alzheimer's Services tab. I would now like to introduce you to Caitlin Green, our Alzheimer's Services Coordinator, who has put together this wonderful program. Caitlin, take it away.
Thank you, Wendy. I just put into the chat box the information Wendy just gave regarding where our workshops can be found. The recorded workshops can also be found on the Humboldt Senior Resource Center YouTube page as well, and that's at HSRC. Thank you for joining us today. We have Dr. Michael Fratkin with us. Thank you, Michael, for joining us and being willing to open up a conversation that so many like to have or need to have. And I just wanted to give one brief thing that next month we have our Lessons in Dementia workshop with Dr. Samantha Day on May 15th from 2 to 3 o'clock, and I will be inputting all the information on how to register for that in the chat box as well. Please feel free to have conversation today. It is greatly encouraged. And I will pass it off to you, Michael.
Thank you so much, Caitlin and Wendy. Wow, this is like so many friends. I'm so happy to see you. The ones that I don't recognize, will you also be my friends too? Can I consider like this comprehensively a Zoom room full of my friends? Is that fair? Yes, I have nodding. I'm looking at page 2. There's still a lot of people hiding behind their non-video, and page 3 is almost unacceptably dark. So put on your videos, get into the conversation. A funny thing happened to me on the way to the Senior Resources Center is that I almost went to the Senior Resources Center thinking I was going to find you all there, but Wendy saved me from that. So I am here in my home, my little studio space here, and I am so pleased to have this opportunity to talk to so many of you today and to listen to your thoughts and input on what is a really delicate and extremely real topic. The pain and difficulty of grief and loss in the context of our own aging and the aging of those that we love. I'm going to introduce myself, and then we're going to do something a little bit interesting. First, I'm just going to say My name is Michael Fratkin. I am now your friend. I am also a father and a husband and a brother and a son and a recent snorkeler and a lot of things, a lot of different things, as well as being what's called a palliative care doctor. What a palliative care doctor is, for those of you that haven't worked with me side by side, which is like half of you guys, palliative care is the practice of medicine or the specialty of medicine that focuses on the human aspects of living with serious illness. It focuses on kind of comprehensive person-centered care for a person and their family and their caregivers as they deal with very serious illness, as they deal with accumulating chronic disease, or the uninvited presence of something like a cancer or an event or a terminal diagnosis of some sort. And it does so with a team, at least in the best of circumstances, and with a well-integrated team, a flat team where everybody respects each other's differences, a nurse, a doctor, a social worker, a chaplain, community health workers, working together to kind of get around the broad and human experience of people as they face medical issues. So people in palliative care tend to be in palliative care in as much as they also seem to want to have the best possible medical or disease-directed care too. So folks, when they're finished with going to the hospital or complicated procedures or chemotherapy for cancer, or when they're finished with all of that, then what we do in a palliative care as our job is to gently help them transition to a hospice model of care, which is very much like ours, but which is more robust and more complete, at least where there's a service area that allows for comprehensive in-home hospice care, or hospice care in the hospital now and again, or hospice care in a hospice house, or whatever. So palliative care, that's the sort of general kind of defined general definition of what it is. What I like to say is a more simple kind of explanation of what palliative care is. And it really just has three things in it. Number one, we don't take care of any patients. We only take care of people, and we do so with other people who bring a variety of skills, perspectives, nursing, social work, chaplaincy, but they also bring their humanity. And we never lose sight of the person we're caring for is not a problem or a disease, but as a person. So number one, people, not patients. Number two, we tend to be very good at the management of symptoms, the things that make you miserable from sickness. When it's an ear infection, it's ear pain. When it's cancer, it can be a lot of things. When it's losses and grief related to more chronic progressive disease, we're very good at symptom control. And the third thing that we do is that we help people and their families to navigate, to make their way through what can often be a very complicated medical set of choices and decisions, but what is always hard from a human perspective, even when things are really simple. So people, not patients, symptom control, and navigational assistance for people who are seriously ill. So that's what palliative care is. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through and have each of you tell me your name and where you live. And that's all. You're not allowed to tell me a story about your brother's, sister's, mother's, nephew's dog. You're only allowed to say your name and where you live, with the understanding that I could have you talk for 5 minutes apiece, but it's actually in that first 10 seconds that who you are will actually come through energetically. People will know who you are. So I'm going to ask you to speak your name and where you live, mute, unmute, or unmute, then mute again quickly. And we'll go through these 65 people. And it seems like it'll take a long time, but it won't take a long time. And it'll be super valuable and I'll know who you are. So first things first, Judith.
Hi, I'm Judith McGinty.
Huh? And where are you?
Eureka, California.
Awesome. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa. And I'm from San Jose.
San Jose. Nancy.
Nancy Scott, Fair Oaks, California.
Awesome. Nancy Carell.
Nancy Kinleyville, California.
Awesome. Diane.
Diane Winter in Hidden Valley Lake, California.
Emily.
Emily Trutt, Bayside, California.
Zoe.
Zoe Sipe, Oakland, California.
Awesome. Lori.
Lori Rose, Dinsmore, California.
Patricia.
Do you mean Patricia Ann?
Yes. That's
Thank you.
Patricia
Ann.
hyphen. I forgot the hyphen. Sorry.
A hyphen is a plus. Eureka. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Patricia Ann. Christo.
Christopher Larson, Whale Gulch.
Carolyn.
Me, Caroline Isaacs.
Caroline, thank you.
I work in Eureka, California.
Awesome. Deli.
My name is Deli and I'm from Eureka, California.
Thank you. Michelle.
My name is Michelle Lewis-Lusso, and I am from Blue Lake, California.
Awesome. Marie.
My name is Marie Isabel Fazone. I'm from Eureka, California.
Thanks. Gretchen Ann.
I'm Gretchen Ann and I'm from Garberville, California.
Carrie.
I'm Carrie Raphael. I don't know did we get confused here?
No, we're good. We got the two Carries together. It's cool. You tell us who you are.
I'm Carrie Raphael in Willow Creek, California.
Cool. Welcome. Carrie.
And I'm Carrie Furtado and I'm from Fieldbrook.
Excellent. Evelyn. It's also a hand-eye coordination test to see how you guys do with the mute button. Go ahead. We'll come back to you, Evelyn. Latrice.
Watson, Eureka, California.
Thank you. Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Hurley. I live just outside of Eureka.
Awesome. Evelyn, you want to try again?
Evelyn Weeby Anderson. I live in Arcata.
Super good. Janice.
Janice Hand, and I live in Fieldbrook, California.
Awesome. Gail.
Gail Garman from Eureka, California.
Fantastic. Brianna.
Bree, and I live in Eureka, California.
Larry. Larry Gleaton.
Yes, Larry Gleaton.
I'm Larry Gleaton, and I live in Fortuna.
Thanks, Larry. It's good to see you. Sort of. You're a little bit blurry, but that's okay. Erica.
Erica, Eureka.
Nice to see you. Linda C.
Hi, it's Linda Candioti from Garberville.
Awesome. Boy, things got all screwed up there. Helena.
Helena, and I'm in Sonoma County, California.
Wonderful. Rachel.
Rachel Waldman, Eureka, California.
Awesome. Jose.
Jose Antonio from Los Angeles, California.
Nice to see you, Jose. Thanks for traveling so far. Jamie.
Jamie Lynn from Ukiah, California.
Yes, indeed. Cheryl. Cheryl always struggles with that mute button. That's Cheryl Anthony.
Okay,
There
Cheryl Anthony from Shelter Cove, California.
Yes, you are from Shelter Cove, the Shelter Cove crew. Melody.
You're not sure the pain on the feeling yet.
Melody, Shelter Cove, California.
He's gonna
Awesome.
ask me to talk in a minute.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
then
No, that's great.
Caitlin will help for those that are remuting impaired. Caitlin will help by remuting those folks. Alicia.
I'm Alicia Rassin and I'm in Eureka.
Awesome. Susan Alton.
Sue Alton from Eureka.
Sue, good. Laura, good to see you.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from Blue Lake.
Mhm. Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Froelich and I'm in Eureka.
Martha.
I'm Martha and I'm in Eureka.
Okay. Jeanette.
Jeanette, I'm in Eureka.
Fantastic. Doralee.
Doralee Smith, I'm in Arcata.
Awesome. Rebecca F. Stephanie. Oh, Stephanie.
Yes, I'm in Eureka.
Okay, good to see you. Leora Levenbach and company.
Hi, I'm Leora, and I'm currently in Eureka. I live in Arcata.
Hi, I'm
Taylor, and I work in Eureka.
Fantastic. Hudson.
My name's Hudson Glover, and I'm in Eureka.
Cool. And does anybody else want to turn on their video? In which case I will ask them to verbally introduce themselves. Otherwise, I will shorten this process. But I hope that you found, Alegria, I know you.
Hi, I'm Alegria Sita. I'm in Eureka, California.
Thank you, Alegria. Nice to see your face. So it's an exercise that takes a bit of time, but from my point of view, it actually brings us together. I have a set of ideas that I have prepared, more or less, as much as I ever prepare. But I'm very much interested in following y'all's lead, and I hope that by speaking with your own voice and introducing yourself into this group, that you'll feel a little less self-conscious about doing that. I'd like to just go from one question or comment to the next. Caitlin, are there any in the chat or any pre-comments that I can start working with? Or does anybody just wish to raise their hand and tell me?
Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael, so, in thinking about this presentation and really, really looking forward to this, I just found that I have been thinking a lot about grief and loss, in particular to people who have dementia and those who are caring for them, because it's a little bit different. I recently lost my mom, and grief and loss seem like they're following a really well documented trail. Your parents pass away, there's grief and loss, and there's a lot of good books about it, etc. But in the case of dementia, it seems like people experience and their loved ones experience kind of a slow, complicated loss and grief process. And I'm wondering if you could share from your experiences with folks who have traveled that and, maybe help us put some words to it.
Well, I'm never at a loss for words, but I'm circumspect about answering that question. The experience for each individual as they face the loss of their own life or the loss of their own self or the loss of their abilities or the things for which they have identified themselves is so unique in every situation. The words I would offer that might seem pithy, but also familiar to some of you, is that the path that we travel to the very end is the path that is just right for us. All the resistance to the selection of such a path that we are offered is futile. As caregivers and as individual mortal souls, the path we walk is the path we're meant to walk. That's provocative, and I would like to have somebody who feels differently to speak up. I know that there's somebody that feels differently about that. Is there anybody that has something that is sort of different from that? Just raise your hand or just go ahead and speak.
Could I say something?
Please. Yeah.
I totally hear what you're saying, and it makes total sense.
Yeah.
When I think of aging for myself, and then I can kind of compare that to, say, a path my mom followed. She had Alzheimer's. So I was with her for those 12 years in that decline.
Yeah.
And I feel like for my aging, my death, my moving into aging, loss of function, I want to follow that path, but there's that fear, having observed it, and that loss of cognition, hearing the stats about all of us boomers, they're going to come down with Alzheimer's, and looking at how I perceive the insidiousness of the disease, i.e. loss of mind. I'm hoping that I can stay on that path somehow, even if I don't get Alzheimer's, or whatever path I choose to go on with my cognitive decline, into the subsequent decades, where I'm going to live, how I'm going to navigate my life. I'm hoping I can somehow follow that intuitive path, because I would love to do that. But logistically, the fear is there that negates my feeling like I could do that.
Did she do that, your mom? Did she just seem to follow?
To some extent. She unfortunately fell and broke her hip standing up in the assisted living facility I had to move her into. But in some ways, she wanted to be at home. I know that. She was ready to die. But in some ways, she could follow it. I think with the help of me being there for her, and other family members, like bringing her music, which she loved. But I don't really know for sure.
Yeah,
if she was able to.
So that idea of accepting the path that we're given is a big deal. Go ahead, Dorley.
Sorry.
No.
My husband was calling me, so I was trying to mute.
Okay. Do you want to offer?
And I didn't get muted quite fast enough.
Okay, great.
For just a second.
Good. I see Evelyn's hand is up.
So I'm in the middle of that journey right now with both my parents, who have some cognitive decline and are living with us. And there's times when, especially my mother is very sharp and remembers things that I'm surprised she remembers. And, she doesn't have a definitive diagnosis of Alzheimer's, but that's, what it looks like. And, other times where she's just getting by, but she forgets the thing that I want to respond to what you had to say, but the thing that bothers me the most is she's always had a very gracious understanding of living and dying. And this is a conversation I've had with her over the years, long before she was dying. But now in her memory loss, something will happen, like she'll become short of breath, or she's falling more frequently. And she just she's in a panic about it, or she takes really long naps, and that agitates my father. Even though we remind him it's okay, she's conserving energy, she can sleep as long as she wants. So all of these little details, I feel like I have the resources to tell her what's going on, and I found that I have to just, honesty is the best policy. Of course, you know, gentle, loving honesty, but you know, well, you're at the last part of your life right now. And so sometimes you get short of breath, and that's what we have the oxygen for, and little things like that. But when you said this is the path that they are supposed to be traveling, I think, yes, if they have the resources that they need and that the society offers. I think so often people and our cultures are afraid to talk openly about death and dying, and especially the generation my folks come from. So it, you know, that I even have to steel myself and go, you know, this is what dying looks like, but you know, we're just going to make sure you're comfortable and you're safe and you're not alone, and I love you, and all of those things. So there's still so many gaps in that path for people. It might be that path that they are supposed to be on, but what's heartbreaking is when they don't have
what they need,
when they don't have the medical cultural support, and they don't have a society that says, yes, it's okay, this is to be like this.
Yeah, this conversation that we're having is part of a very slow renaissance of getting real with the nature of our existence. And certainly the Senior Resources Center kicks butt in providing as many resources as they can scrounge together. But our healthcare system, well, is broken and has been broken and is getting worse. So many, many, many people don't even have the most basic things that they need. In fact, I would say, and have said, well, I actually did the math once, and I'll get to you, Jose, in just a moment. I did the math once and found out that on this planet, about 110 billion of us silly human primates have lived and walked the planet. And about 7+ billion of us remain. And I would argue that it has never been harder to complete life, to die, than it is in these last 50 to 75 years of Western developed technological healthcare. It has never been harder. And back in the day, they didn't have much of anything that was, you know, biologically active in any kind of way that we think of pharmaceutically. But they came and they showed up and they stayed there, and they brought whatever they had. They brought song, they brought plants, they brought love, and they brought themselves to the bedside of people who died in the absence of pain control or cardiac medicines or hospitalization or intravenous infusions or God knows, peg tube feeding tubes. All of those interventions were not there, but what we had there is what we don't reliably provide to most people. And that the ones that do provide most of that, the love, the presence, the dedication, the devotion, the kindness, the nourishment, sometimes the song, sometimes the laughter. Those people we call caregivers, and those people suffer greatly in the absence of social context that can hold them. So what you're speaking to, Evelyn, just like rings true to me and makes me crazy. Like, how have we created a society that doesn't know how to care for our elders and our ill as they die? Most of us have gotten through most of our adult life before we ever actually even saw somebody die. Back in the day, maybe 75 to 100 years ago, nobody got out of their childhood without experiencing directly in the household death right there in front of them. And the modeling that comes from usually the women that cared in those circumstances. So the doctor would come in, he brings his black bag. You know what was in that black bag? Nothing was in that black bag. A stethoscope, maybe a little bit of opium tincture, usually a flask of whiskey for the doctor on a cold night, but it was empty. But the doctor came and the doctor was present and the doctor was there. And that was meaningful and present, even in the absence of very powerful tools. Now we have all these powerful tools, but we don't have the context for which it can do the simple stuff of loving people the way that they need to be loved and be allowed to have the natural death that is of their path. Not easy, often not easy. It wasn't easy for thousands of years to die, but it wasn't as hard, I think, and as lonely as it often is for so many people these days. So thank you for that. Jose.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to react to your comment about being on a path. And I just wonder, it's more of a rhetorical question, but to what degree how do we reconcile that notion with what we've been taught since we are children, I suppose, that you fight diseases, that you have to have this resilience, and that there's a correlation with the way in which we approach illness and the mind and the power of the mind and all that, all those ideas that we have that are so ingrained in our upbringing. And how do we reconcile that with, at the same time, pursuing, which I would think it's certainly a healthier, potentially healthier approach to illness, but yet there's a little bit of a sense of defeat without even starting the path, if you reconcile with what we've been taught.
No, really, really good stuff, Jose. We talk about the metaphor of fighting, but it's such a setup, isn't it, really? Like, because none of us, I'm looking around, I don't think I'm looking at 67, not a single one of us is going to get out of this thing alive. Not a single one of us, right? And so if we set it up as a zero-sum struggle with life, we all end up losers. And none of us are such. That zero-sum fighting, winning or losing, it's a desperately harmful metaphor that we're stuck with in a lot of ways. And particularly in Western white American culture, we fight for our rights. We fought for our independence. We arm ourselves with firearms to protect our safety. We are ready to fight at every moment, or ready to run away at any moment. So I think the metaphor fails. Does anybody have any better metaphors that they think, like, what this whole, we're born, we live, we die? How might a metaphor serve us better than fighting? Has anyone heard any better ones? Fighting for your life is a great marketing strategy. No. Yes, it is, I guess, because we'll arm you, the arming of people. But does anybody a better metaphor, please? I've got a few, but I'm looking for what you got.
How about dance with?
Dance with. That's a little on the groovy Northern California side, probably okay for this crew, dancing. But for a lot of folks, that's not actually, that doesn't work. But that's a good one too. That's one I was fond of for a long. Work with.
I got one. It's from this book I read to my kids when they were little by Paul Goebel. He wrote about Native Americans. It's like crossing the river.
Crossing the river.
That's kind of like being with nature, which is how I want to be when I die. Crossing the river to the other side, basically.
Yeah. Breathe. Flow is one of my favorite concepts, right?
Maybe
Yeah.
walking each other home.
Yeah.
Walking each other
Yeah.
home.
Yeah,
That's
Ram Dass. Yep.
our beloved Ram Dass.
I wanted to just make a comment in regards to what was coming up. So my mother's death was one of the saddest deaths that I was ever around, because she felt like she was failing the doctors by dying. And that was it was hard to be around, to witness her feeling like death was a failure.
Yeah.
But one of the most incredible death I was ever around, I'm a social worker, and I was working closely with the local hospice, and we were working with this client who had a history of drug abuse, and they were not getting the help that they needed. And in the end, the people that were around her were all people that were paid to be with her. And she had it was the most beautiful death, because there was so much love there and support and no judgment. And her biggest fear was that she was going to be alone, and she wasn't. And so it was interesting how that death, which could have been the worst, was actually a very beautiful death.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Leora. Lori.
Well, this is going back a little bit to the metaphors, but there is a difference in your disease stage and also in your age. So my niece died recently. You probably remember, Michael, it was a few years ago, but she was only 28, and she fought to the very last breath. And that seemed appropriate to her. And my mother passed about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And she had dementia, and she was very embraced it. You know, you could say she danced with it, she worked with it, she tried to figure out how to do it. And then my father just passed away in January, also with dementia, but he was totally in denial about it. And so for all of these people, it was a matter of feeling out what they needed to feel like the moment in their life was complete. Not like where they were going to be complete when they died, but what they needed in the moment. And I think with dementia, that's a particular thing that caregivers and family have to work with, because you know, at some point with dementia, even though we as people who work with dementia know it's coming down the line, maybe the family doesn't and the person doesn't, and they still want to go to the hospital for this or that treatment. And you know, we have to, the person and all their beloved people, work with whether that's a good idea or not. And at some point there's a place, like with my father, we made the decision for him. My father would have coded, you know, had himself coded to the last minute, and he was really going downhill. But he had a stroke, and my brother made the decision, which all of the people around my dad felt was appropriate, that he would just stay at home until he passed from the stroke. But I firmly believe my dad would not have wanted that.
Can you just name your dad's first name? Can you just say it out loud? Just your dad.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Charlie. Yeah.
I didn't know that Charlie had died.
Yeah, he just passed in January, and it was beautiful in its own way. It was very hard, obviously.
It goes all different ways, right? Sometimes it's like almost like orchestrated or choreographed, as if somebody wrote the script for the lovely death and the letting go. And then sometimes it doesn't go that way at all. And it's a big, terrible mess. And my provocative statement that it is as it ought to be is meant to be big enough to wrap around that whole range of circumstances. Is there anybody that wants to tell me it happened to my 12-year-old son and it wasn't okay, and it couldn't be meant to be, or I'm really mad at that statement? Anybody? Or some related comment? Nancy?
So I am this goes along with what you just asked, Michael. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can totally see you. It's nice to see you.
So I'm currently taking care of my 90-year-old, like she's a second mother to me. I call her my Yiddishy mommy. And she is very alert and oriented, and she has cancer. She's on hospice right now, living with me. And she has watched all her siblings except one die of the abuse from the medical profession, like heroic measures, just, I don't need to elaborate on that. And her youngest brother, who is still alive, has dementia, and he's in a Jewish home, and he's got bed sores, and he can't eat, and he's just suffering a very prolonged death. You know what I mean? And so my little Lou is her name. She is, again, full of life and alert and oriented and beautiful, and she's pursuing medical aid in dying. And all of her loved ones are in support of this. I've been a hospice nurse for a long time, and I've dealt with a lot of death and dying. I cared for my husband, my mom, my dad, my brother. It was beautiful. They died in my arms. And I'm having a really hard time with this. I want to honor her, and I certainly will. When you asked that last question, I got really upset with her because my son is here helping. He adores her. He loves her. And when she asked if he was okay with this, I just lost my shit and said, don't ask us if we're okay with this, because I'm having a really hard time.
Yeah.
No,
Nancy, I was hoping that somebody would bring up this concept of control, right? In some fashion or another. Control is really where the medical aid in dying. Does everybody know what that is? They call it MAID, or the California End of Life Options Act, or in Oregon, it's called the Death with Dignity Act. And it's a way for people who qualify to participate in a process that allows them to obtain a prescription to end their life if they choose to take it, if they meet a certain set of criteria. It's a little bit tricky in the population that maybe organizes us together, because people without the ability to really cognitively wrap their head around what it is, or without physical ailments that are likely to lead to death in 6 months, people with dementia are not really able to participate in the process, whether you think it's a good idea or whether you don't think it's a good idea. And it's very confronting when an individual has it, when an individual has a thought about that, that doesn't align so much with the social and cultural context that they're in. So there's some distance between you as her caregiver and beloved pseudo daughter, caring for her and wanting to provide for every need that she has. I know how you work, Nancy, so I know that you're looking for every opportunity to scratch any itch, to soothe any problem as it comes up, to fix what's fixable. And yet she is holding on to this idea of medical aid in dying, and it's almost always about control, right? Before I talk more about that, and Zoe, I saw your hand go up and down, but I'll go back to you, okay? I would like to talk about, well, how do you think, when I said there was 102 billion dead people, how do you think they died? Some of them fell off a cliff. A couple of them got like bored by a saber-toothed tiger or some such. lots of them actually did, or some of them died in a sort of acute, a few days of overwhelming infection or complications from childhood diseases or whatever. They died pretty quickly, but actually lots of people died more slowly. Some people lived long enough to develop cognitive impairment, dementia that we call it today. But they didn't generally have these 10, 12, 15-year courses. They didn't generally make it all the way to the complete loss of self because they didn't have the tools and tricks of modern technology to artificially prolong their dying process. I'll tell you a story about my mom. My mom, oh, she's a piece of work. Barbara is her name. She, on her 27th wedding anniversary to a guy I never really liked very much, she choked on a piece of steak. She went down, down, down in the restaurant. It was one of those events that maybe some of you have witnessed in the past. It was not pretty. It was stuck in her trachea. They couldn't oxygenate her. They stopped trying to get it out and they got her to the emergency room. And by the time they got there, 25 minutes later, she had been, asystolic or flatlined on the monitor. They reached in there with some big tool and McGill forceps, and they pulled it out. And then they started to ventilate her after 27 minutes. And then they called the palliative care son, the power of attorney, on the phone, and I was in the ICU working with actually two people who had severe anoxic brain injury or severe brain damage as a result of no oxygen for a prolonged period of time. At the very same time, so I'm looking at those people in the ICU, they're telling me the story of my mother. I fly to Texas. They've got her, they cool down the body and they do all the intensive care unit stuff, tubes here, tubes there, everywhere. But I just knew it was going to be devastating. And I also knew that I couldn't battle with her husband, despite having power of attorney. And he was in the fight mode, right? So I had to hang back and watch this unfold. And I was sure that she was going to be very severely brain damaged as a result of the event. But they warmed her back up. They lowered the amount of ventilating support, and she opened her eyes. And she breathed off the tube. And in fact, a couple of days later, after her sore throat had passed, she said, I feel kind of good. She had been horribly depressed for like years. And her depression kind of washed away. And over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, she recovered and rehabbed and went home. And I could not believe it. I knew that the right thing to do was to not push everything at her. I was sure. So fast forward 3 years, her husband gets sick with cancer, dies in like 3 weeks. And I end up down there back on the bench. And what I realized is that she really did have very severe brain damage, but she had the right kind of brain damage for her marriage. She lost the ability to have any real executive control. She had no forward gear. She had no reverse gear. But she was easily drawn through life by a very domineering guy who I didn't like very much. They had it going on pretty well for like 3 years, but with him gone, she was like stuck in neutral and miserable and angry. So of course I brought her up here. I brought her dog here. This is the dog that I inherited. Some of you have met her before. This is Itzy. We thought that the dog would make a difference for her. We thought that her grandchildren would make a difference for her. And we had her up here for 10 months. And over, she talked about just wanting to die. She wouldn't go downstairs for food. She looked at a book and read the same page over and over again. She was so miserable. And one day she says, Michael, would you kill me I was like, well, no, I can't do that. And I came home and I cried a bit and I talked to my wife. And went back the following day and I said, listen, Mom, I can't kill you. I won't kill you. But you could stop eating and drinking. And if you stop eating and drinking entirely, your consciousness will start to change at around 3 or 4 days. You'll not be filled with hunger or thirst after the first day. And I would expect that you would last about, 5 to 7 days. And you'd slip into unconsciousness and then you would die. Just like those other 102 billion human primates that have passed away since the beginning of human existence. And surprisingly enough, for a woman who is ambivalent about just about everything her whole life, she made that choice. And all of a sudden, I was not on the other side of the fence trying to drag her into wanting to be alive, but I was on the same side of the fence as her. My sisters came down, we pulled out the albums. There were lots of laughter and lots of tears. She drank quite a bit of water, so she lasted about 3.5 weeks. But during that time, we all loved each other and we all told stories. And she really didn't care about the dog anymore, but I knew I was going to get stuck with that silly thing. We brought hospice in for the last 9 days or so. And it was a good death. And I artificially prolonged it through my own projections about what a meaningful life would be. For most people with dementia, beyond a certain point, we often either encourage, push, or force, sometimes surgically, artificial forms of hydration and nutrition. And that for many of them, it's not a matter of withholding that kind of intake. It's a matter of allowing them to define for themselves their own course through it. When they get an infection, we routinely, automatically respond by evaluating urinary tract or chest x-rays and antibiotics and all the rest of it. These are all things that they never had until some period of time, and all of which are super valuable when they support a person's goals and intentions and quality of their life, but maybe not so kind, or maybe shouldn't be given so automatically, without regard to that person's prior expressed intent when they were able to define for themselves their own wishes. And maybe not so automatically valuable, and quite often can be an artificial way of prolonging death rather than really supporting meaningful quality of life. That is so subtle for every individual person and every dyad of beloved caregiver and client, or patient and client, or nurse and patient. It's a very unique circumstances around each one, especially as cognitive impairment worsens. So it's really in that context, I think about medical aid in dying as a reasonable choice for some people who are cognitively capable and qualify for the legally sanctioned mechanism. It's okay with me. I don't have a moral objection. I just want to make sure that everything that we can do for them is done for them, like I know is happening for Lulu. Zoe.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate what you're saying. And I'm just at a very different point in the journey. And I'm aware perhaps that, is this call ending in 5 minutes?
Ish.
My mom was recently diagnosed, and so I'm hoping to get a little bit of a roadmap, because I think to your point of control and letting people walk the path and flow, which I deeply appreciate. If somebody, my question to myself and supporting my parents is how to shape that flow with as much safety, comfort, and understanding as possible.
Mhm.
And what could I do to support that? I hear that many people have walked this path already, and I'm sure most of us are in different places, but any resources around that, or things to be thinking about, ways to orient early on, how to even respond to diagnoses, how to share that, all of that stuff. And perhaps that's way earlier than many others are on, but that was my
So
particular.
you're right on track. You're right where you need to be, and you do need a lot of help and support and orientation and input. And as much as you're interested and tolerant, there's a ton of information. Caitlin, Wendy, can you talk a little bit about how the Senior Resource Center responds to a new caregiver, maybe earlier in the process, and how you think about the kinds of resources you guys have to offer?
I can talk about it since that's one
your
of
job.
the main things I do. It starts off typically by receiving a consultation call. We receive calls from the community, and from there direct them to local resources and other resources that exist in the community, also providing free packets of information about what you're going through and make recommendations.
Mm-hmm. There's enormous amount of resources, most of it pretty good. And what you can see, this isn't, we're not going to connect you to all the 64 people who are on the call right now, Zoe, but there's a world of people asking these questions. There's a world of people who are in various stages that want to be of support to each other. Are there caregiver support, peer support structures built in at the Senior Resource Center?
We have a caregiver support group starting this upcoming month in May, as well as the Redwood Caregiver Resource Center offers caregiver support groups as well. And Zoe, I can reach out to you after this, and we can touch base on kind of what you're looking for if you'd like.
Yeah, actually, and thank you, Caroline. So the Redwood Caregivers Resource Center, the Alzheimer's Association, can anybody else can you just throw into the chat all your ideas or where you found value along the way? I know that there's more, so just if you could just throw them into the chat.
And I'd like to add, if I could, Michael,
please.
At the end of this call, there will be an opportunity to complete a survey that's just part of our process. And there is a space in there for comments. And I would invite any of you, if you're seeking additional resources or perhaps had questions or concerns that you didn't want to bring up in a forum like this, please feel free to leave your questions or comments in that space in the participant survey, and we can, discuss that with you after the call or set up a time to talk with you.
Super good. Super good. In wrapping up, because I think it's wrappy-uppy time, I think that if I had a secret plan today, it wasn't to give you the 17 things to think about when you're facing grief and loss as a caregiver for dementia. It wasn't to tell you the tricks or pearls, because there just ain't any. If there was a secret plan, it was to normalize your experience and contextualize your new identity as a part of a tribe of people that are leaning in, where unfortunately our society and our healthcare systems and most structures other than the Senior Resource Center are going the other direction. Advanced care planning, yesterday was National Healthcare Decisions Day. Advanced care planning is something that if you haven't really deeply looked at, please deeply look at it, especially early, Zoe, with your parents as they are facing, an evolving story. But it's normal that human beings are born, live our lives and feel immortal for a minute, and then face the reality, not the sad reality or the happy reality that we die, but just the reality that we die. And that the mystery of this experience for each of us as individuals is not to be unpuzzled. It is the puzzle. It is the nature of our experience, and we're in it together. So it's normal. You're not alone. There's some resources, it ain't perfect, but there's some pretty extraordinary people, and I'm looking at 63 of them right now, or some of them with their cameras on. So just from that, I just want to consider you all my friends. You can reach out to me. My email is Dr. DOCTOR Gatito, GATITO, and I knew that would make Diane smile, at gmail.com. She's the only one I think that knows where I got that nickname. I'm currently working and doing a little bit of palliative care work at the Humboldt Center for New Growth. You can look that up as well. It's www.humboldtcenterfornewgrowth.com. I'm no longer working in a comprehensive team structure, as sad as that is, or Nancy and Emily and Lori and others. But I'm happily kind of exploring a new way of being useful in the community. And I'm really glad to see all my friends at Heart of the Redwoods Community Hospice in Southern Humboldt and Garberville. That's a team that I do get to stay connected to as the medical director down there. And let's see, were there any other loose ends I wanted to say? Janet, thank you for everything. Alegria, you're the best. And all the rest of my new friends, I look forward to connecting further in the future.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your time with us, and everyone else for your conversations. And as Wendy said, I really encourage you to fill out our survey at the end. It's really helpful to us to try to create this program to meet the needs of others in the community. And we love hearing your feedback. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.